What's up, guys? Welcome to the video. My channel name is College Football Frenzy, back here with another video. Today, I'm going to be breaking down my top games of Week 1 of the 2020 football season. It's still a very long way away from being Week 1, if the season even starts on time, but I decided why not talk about, in my opinion, the top 10 best games of Week 1. Usually when you think of Week 1, you think of a pretty weak slate of games overall, maybe with one or two ranked matchups in there if you're lucky, but usually the matchups are not great. It's a lot of Power 5 schools playing Group of 5 or FCS schools. Overall, most matchups are not competitive, so usually when you think Week 1, you think pretty weak matchups. However, for this year, I feel like there are going to be a lot of entertaining matchups Week 1. I think there are some good out-of-conference matchups. There are a few good in-conference matchups as well. There's an FCS versus Power 5 matchup that I think is actually going to be intriguing. So there's a lot of good matchups overall. It should be exciting to see some of these Week 1 matchups. A lot of these talented teams are going to be facing each other. Without further ado, I'm going to get into it. Again, I'm not going to break down every position, who's joining a team, who's leaving a team, their recruiting class. That's for prediction videos. I'm just going to be previewing the matchup, saying kind of why I like it. So 10, TCU versus California. Curveball right off the bat here. Out-of-conference Power 5 matchup. I had to throw this on here because it is a rematch of the Cheese Int Bowl. The Cheese Int Bowl, not the Cheese It Bowl. The Cheese Int Bowl, also known as the worst, or maybe if you like defense, the best bowl game matchup ever. Really, in my opinion, it's the worst, but still overall, it was just a truly incredible sight to see. TCU versus California going at it. A lot of interceptions in that game, too many to count. It had a decent ending overall. It had a pretty exciting ending, but besides from that, it was a very boring game. A lot of defense, and the offense has played pretty sloppy. That was only a couple of years ago. So this comes in at 10. I'm excited to see this matchup overall, though, just because I feel like TCU, I want to see if they can bounce back for this upcoming season. They're losing a lot of talent like Blacklock and Jalen Reagor. He went to the Eagles, and there's a few other guys. So that's definitely going to hurt TCU. But overall, I think they can at least try to get bowl eligible again. And then California, they don't have much talent that's leaving, in my opinion. I think they have a pretty good overall returning production. So I'm excited to see how they can do next season, if they can be competitive in the Pac-12 and make at least a challenge for Oregon and Washington when they play them. So I'm excited to see how this game plays out. I probably would favor Cal because they have better returning production and are at home, but this should be an interesting matchup. I'm excited to see how this one goes. And again, it's a rematch of the worst bowl game ever, so, of course I'm going to want to watch it. 9, North Dakota State versus Oregon. This was the FCS versus Power 5 matchup I was talking about. Listen, I don't expect North Dakota State to really win. That being said, North Dakota State does have a history of beating Power 5 teams. We have to acknowledge that. At Iowa in Kinnick Stadium a few years ago, very tough place to play. They went in there and won against at least at the time was a top 15 team. Iowa didn't finish in the top 15 that year, I believe. But still, it was a great win for North Dakota State. They have many other wins over big programs, including a lot of Big Ten teams. So I definitely feel like the Bison overall, could at least make it a little bit intriguing. That being said, Oregon's much more talented, especially on the defense. So I expect the Ducks to win it. But you never know. North Dakota State's been known to upset these Power 5 teams. So I'm not ruling it out. That being said, I would definitely favor Oregon, but it's an intriguing matchup nonetheless, and Oregon definitely can't overlook it. They have Ohio State the next week, so it might be tempting to overlook it, but they really can't do that. 8, Purdue and Nebraska. So this is really going to set the scene, I think, for Nebraska's season. It's kind of like the Colorado game last year. If they can get a win here, I think they'll start out the season on a good track, maybe starting out 6-0 or 7-0. I definitely think their first stretch of games is pretty easy. Their late stretch is very hard, but their first stretch, besides this Purdue game, for the most part, it's pretty easy. So if they can get around Purdue, I think they can have a great start to the season. Overall, Nebraska is very talented, in my opinion. They have a pretty good head coach. That talent and coaching didn't translate on the field last year. Clearly, there's some chemistry problems. Adrian Martinez didn't play very well last year. So I was disappointed with Nebraska last year, but I definitely think they can at least try to bounce back, become at least a bowl-eligible team overall. I think it's going to be a competitive game. I think Purdue, honestly, at least has a shot maybe making the Big Ten championship game. I think the division overall is going to be pretty wide open next year. It usually is. I mean, we've seen Northwestern win it. Wisconsin's won it the most, but still overall, anyone can win that division. So I think Purdue, if they won this game, could definitely get off to a hot start and maybe make some noise in that division. So I think it's a big game for these two teams overall. Definitely one of the more compelling in-conference matchups in Week 1. So I have this one as 8. I think it should be intriguing. Overall, Nebraska's probably more talented and they're at home, but you never know. You never know. With the losses they had last year, you never know. 7, Virginia versus Georgia. All right, so overall, last year, these were two teams that both made New Year's Six Bowls. Georgia made the Sugar Bowl. They won that. Virginia played against Georgia's rival, Florida, in the Orange Bowl, and they actually put up a pretty good fight. They ended up losing by, I believe, 8 to the Gators. But overall, it was a pretty good fight. For this upcoming season, I expect Virginia to definitely decline. I think without Bryce Perkins, who carried the team last year, in my opinion, I don't think they'll be as good. Maybe a 6-6, 7-5 team. As for Georgia, they should probably just get better. They have a tougher schedule than last year, but overall, they have a top 3 recruiting class. You can say it's the best in the nation, and their defense should be great again, and they have a great coaching staff. So I think Georgia's definitely the better team here, and it's in Atlanta. It's still kind of home field advantage for Georgia, even though it's technically at a neutral site game. It's really home field advantage. The reason I do put this at 7, like I said, both these teams made New Year's Six Bowls last year, but overall, definitely I would favor Georgia here. But again, Virginia, they made a New Year's Six Bowl last year. They gave Florida a tough time, so you never ever want to guarantee it. But I would definitely say Georgia. I believe this is the Chick-fil-A kickoff game. 6, West Virginia versus Florida State. So another game that's in Atlanta that weekend. This game, I feel like it's between two teams that were pretty average last year. West Virginia didn't make a bowl game. They came close. Florida State, despite a disappointing season, just barely made a bowl game. They ended up losing in that. But the intriguing thing is that Mike Norvell is now the head coach of Florida State. It should be interesting to see how he does there. If he can get a big victory week 1, that'll set a good tone for the season. If he can't, then that might set a bad tone for the season overall. And they have a tough schedule the rest of the way. So I definitely think this is a big game for the Noles. Even for West Virginia, it's going to be a big game as well. Again, after 2018, I think a lot of people are expecting them to decline, losing Will Greer, losing their past head coach. Of course, they were going to decline, but they can still definitely put up a fight. I would favor Florida State here. I think they're more talented overall, and they've got the better head coach. But again, you never know in these neutral site games. But Florida State right now, in my opinion, is the better team, and they're going to be wanting to get this one more. 5, Indiana versus Wisconsin. I think this is a pretty intriguing in-conference matchup that many people are overlooking here. Wisconsin's losing Jonathan Taylor. We know how good of a running back he is, obviously, so losing him is going to hurt. Their offense overall is not that great, in my opinion. I don't think Jack Cohen's a great quarterback. Their defense, I think, is the best in the Big Ten, though. Probably top 5 defense in all of America. So that's definitely a good thing. They have a great defense, not so great of an offense. It's a home game for the Badgers at Camp Randall Stadium. That's going to be good. But overall, Indiana should be a pretty decent team next year again. Despite the tough schedule, there's really not too much to be pessimistic about for Indiana. Again, they have a tough schedule, but besides from that, they have a lot of stuff to look forward to for this upcoming season. They have a good amount of returning talent overall, and I think they're going to be a pretty good football team who can definitely challenge teams like Michigan or Penn State. So I expect Indiana to be just as good, if not better, than they were last year. I think Wisconsin would definitely have the upper hand in this one, especially having a better defense and being at home, but you never know here. So I would go with Wisconsin here, but Indiana can definitely put up a fight. I think they're going to be a pretty good football team next year. I think they go at least 8-4. 4, Ole Miss versus Baylor. So big matchup here. The two teams, I don't even know if either of them are going to be ranked next year. I think Baylor's maybe an 8-4, 7-5 team. I think Ole Miss is a 6-6 team. So why in the world do I have this as the 4th best game of Week 1? Well, this game is going to feature 2 new head coaches. David Aranda, the previous defensive coordinator of LSU, is going to be coaching at Baylor. And, of course, Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. Very interesting. Both schools overall, new head coaches. I think a lot of talent's probably leaving the schools, especially Baylor. They're losing a lot on defense, which is going to hurt. And on offense, they're losing Denzel Mims. So that definitely hurts overall. It'll be interesting to see how the season goes for Baylor. I would favor the Bears here just because overall they were the better team last year, and it's Kiffin's first game, so it's going to take time for him to get used to Ole Miss. So I think it'll be a good game overall, but I would favor Baylor in this one. Maybe Ole Miss scores a late touchdown to make it look like a better game overall, but I would favor Baylor, but still, it's an interesting match between two new head coaches, how they're going to fit. It'll be interesting to see how they'll fit in these new schools, and we'll see how Charlie Brewer does coming back to Baylor as the quarterback. It should be interesting. He's going to need to carry the team, do a lot next year. The Baylor defense still should be okay, but I think it'll be a little bit worse than it was last year. 3 North Carolina versus UCF. Without a doubt, the best game, in my opinion, before the first Saturday of the college football season. This is held on a Friday. I'm very excited. I'll be watching this game. I think UCF has the potential to be a top 25 team. They're probably one of the best group of 5 teams out there, if not the best group of 5 team out there. They had a lot of inexperience last year on the offense, so I expect UCF to get a lot better overall. Now that they have more experience. It's a home game for the Knights. They play pretty well at home overall, so that definitely helps. I think all 3 of their losses actually were on the road last year, so they played pretty well at home last year. I think with more experience, they'll be a better football team than they were last year. As for North Carolina, pretty good recruiting class. You've got a great head coach, great recruiters on your team, and you've got a great offense. A lot of returning production on that offense, led by a potential Heisman finalist in Sam Howell. So I like this matchup. I would favor UNC, but this is definitely a great matchup. 2 Michigan versus Washington. So talent-wise, I think Michigan clearly has the advantage. I think they have more weapons. They're losing a few guys, but still overall, they definitely have more weapons in my opinion. The run game's decent. The defense, it's okay. It's on and off. I feel like it was great in 2018, not so great in 2019. Their recruiting class, it's top 15 again. No surprise there. They're Michigan. They don't really have to do much to pull in a top 15 recruiting class. They're Michigan. So that's good. They're definitely, I feel like, the more talented team. Washington losing Jacob Eason, that's going to hurt. He was a star quarterback last year, and then they're losing former Hall of Fame head coach Chris Peterson. So it's going to hurt Washington, definitely, losing those 2 key characteristics of their team last year. But this is one of the toughest environments to play in the Pac-12. It's a very tough place to play. It's at home. We'll see how Jimmy Lake does at the head coaching position. But still, I put this at 2 because it's a home game for Washington. And it's a very tough place to play at. They play pretty well at home no matter who they're playing against. They challenged Oregon last year. They almost won that game. So they can really win at home almost against any team. So I expect it to be a pretty good matchup overall, despite Michigan clearly being the more talented team, in my opinion, with a more experienced head coach. I think Jimmy Lake can still be a pretty good head coach overall, but I feel like Jim Harbaugh is still better right now. He has more experience. So this is at 2. I would definitely favor Michigan, but it's a home game for Washington, and they have great scenery and great fans. That keeps them in it. And number 1, what were you expecting? It's USC versus Alabama, 2 very talented teams. Alabama, the defense was shaky last year. It should be decent for this upcoming season. We'll see who gets to start, whether it's Mac Jones or Bryce Young. Overall, though, they have a lot of weapons on offense. Najee Harris, great running back. So they should be a great team overall, led by a great coaching staff. USC, a pretty talented team overall as well. Their offense has a lot of weapons. Kendon Slovis, I'm very excited to see how he does in probably the biggest game of his career. The reason I'm definitely favoring Alabama here is because, the lesser experience of USC and the fact Clay Helton's the coach. So I'm definitely favoring Alabama in this game. But overall, these are 2 very talented teams. Maybe USC pulls off an upset. We would see. That would be great to see. It's the Cowboys kickoff. It's a ranked matchup. It should be an exciting game. Might be top 20. So I have this at 1 overall. I'm excited to see this one. Again, I definitely would favor Alabama, but it should be a good matchup. Anyway, guys, that's it for now. Thank you for joining in. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Check out all my other videos. Leave your recommendations down below, your top 10 list. And that's it for now. Thank you for joining in.